Hello, everybody, and welcome to SkepTalk on the Line. It is the 17th of June, 2024, and I am your host, Shannon Q, back with a vengeance after almost 2 months away. Stoked to be here. Looking forward for all of those people who have challenged me in the comments section to call in and tell me everything that they've ever wanted to say to me. So please call in. The lines are open. You can call in right now. There's a link in the description if you want to use the Intron webs to call in, or you can call using the old-fashioned phone. I'm sure some people still talk on those. It is 720-619-2288. Please give us a call. Our lines are open and our screeners are anxiously anticipating your call. But more importantly, today I have pulled somebody into my grasp who I've been following for a long time, who was foolish enough to say yes to me when I stalked them and asked them if they would come and host with me. It is Trevor from Believe It or Not.
Hey!
I'm so excited you're here. Tell everybody who you are and what you're all about.
I'm Trevor, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm from the Believe It or Not YouTube channel, and that's what I do. That's who I am, and I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you here. I have followed your channel for a long time and finally mustered up the courage to reach out and be like, would you come and maybe host the show with me? And you said yes, and I was so excited that you are going to be here with me to take calls today. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about, like, while we're waiting for some calls to come in, I do see that some are coming in now that we're open, but tell everybody what your channel's all about and what you do over there at Believe It or Not, just in case anybody's stupid enough to not be familiar already.
So I do, I have a podcast, but also I do a, we call it a docuseries or video essays, and I kind of pick a topic that affects mostly ex-Christians or people who grew up in that evangelical world, and I make a video about it where I string together a bunch of clips from theists and Christians saying horrendous things sometimes, and talk about them and talk about how it affects you as a believer and as a non-believer, and things like that, and how I am as a non-believer now, and how religion affected my life, kind of thing. So
yeah, you tend to do like really like sort of deep dives into very specific nuanced concepts, and you string together a lot of different clips from different areas and different people that brings together the narrative to very clearly demonstrate the aspects of harm or where there's inconsistencies. That's a lot of hard work, and I really, really respect what you do over on that channel, and I'm really excited that you're here. What made you decide that you were going to get into it?
Well, it's funny because I was doing sketch comedy, I was doing other random YouTube stuff, and I had a podcast. I wanted to start another podcast, and I talked to my friend about how we both grew up religious and how we should talk about that. So we were going to start the podcast. She dropped out, and so we changed focus. I got another friend who's an atheist who didn't grow up religious to be my co-host, and that's been great. But it got me thinking way more about my upbringing, and I realized that there were certain things that didn't really work in the podcasting genre. So during COVID, everybody's at home doing a lot of nothing, and you can't really shoot videos with your friends anymore. So I tried to come up with something I could do myself, and I came up with the concept of just how Christianity and religion tells you you're broken and you're worthless without God. You're like filthy rags. And I realized that that affects you negatively, and that affected me negatively. And growing up with a terrible self-esteem, how that all tied back. So I was like, well, I'm going to try this video essay thing. And that one, I liked making it, so I started making more, and then people started watching them, and here we are.
Well, I'm so glad that you did make that decision, because I think it's a really valuable contribution to the sphere. If you were to have an ideal call today, like if you were to throw down the gauntlet to make a challenge, what type of call are you maybe chomping at the bit to get today? Sometimes that'll
know. I mean, that's such a good question. I don't know. Somebody was trying to prove to me today that God was real. That didn't work out. So if anybody has any evidence that they can share that God's definitely real, I'd love to hear it, because nothing's worked so far. But maybe I could rethink the whole thing.
You heard it here today, guys.
Yeah.
You heard it here today. Mine are always lately I've been really, really liking people talking about like the constitution of the Bible, like referencing the Bible as proof for existence, for the existence of God, and the integrity of the Bible, and not realizing how that falls apart. But my favorites are always morality and the soul. Those are the two that I like to explore the most, are morality and the soul, because I think like whatever our deconversion linchpin is, and those two things were kind of my deconversion linchpin is, you tend to like examine that more and want to explore that more. And those were my deconversion linchpins, were the soul and morality. So I always like discussing those. So our lines are open. If you would like to give us a call, we already have one call on the line, so I will take it. We will read super chats at the end. So if you would like to support the channel, you can absolutely send a super chat and we will read it at the end. You have to stick around so that you can hear it. So you stick around so that you can hear us for the super chats. All right. Are you ready to take a call, Trevor?
I'm ready. Born ready.
All right. Let's do it. We're going to talk to Pip. Hello, Pip.
Hello there.
Hello. You are on SkepTalk on the line.
I'm doing well, thanks. My persistent cough is finally getting better. Just about. Anyway, not wasting any time, just going to jump right into this. I wanted to ask you specifically, Shannon, if evolutionary psychology is junk science, because I have a really good book on the subject, which talked a lot about things like, like why we developed like a short brain kind of like reaction to things, as like a predatory defense mechanism, or why we love, junk food, because that was like rarer in the hunter-gatherer society or during our evolutionary past than it is now when we have like an overabundance. But I've also seen it quite used in quite a malicious way to like justify sexism and the like, and there just seems to be this divide in general opinion as to whether or not evolutionary psychology has merit to begin with. And since you probably know a lot more about psychology than I do, I'd just like to get your opinion on that.
Okay, that's a great question. I actually think about this a lot, so I'm kind of glad that you called. I don't think that it is specifically junk science, but what I do think it is a very young science. So psychology in and of itself is a relatively young field, right? So I've actually taken courses on evolutionary psychology in university. I think I have a textbook behind me. Maybe no, I have environmental, sorry. But so I took evolutionary psychology as a course when I was attending university to get my degree. And it's very difficult to quantify things appropriately in evolutionary psychology because you're doing them post hoc, right? So you're basically looking into the past and you're seeing sort of trends in the past, and then you're attempting to fit them into a model. But the problem with that is that you have only partial information. So you don't have all the information. You just have the information that's available to you, and you have no idea how much that information is or isn't skewed. So fitting it into models is exceptionally difficult to do, and doing that with confidence is something that you just really, really shouldn't do. So it is and could be the case that there are trends in our psychology that exists because of what has happened to us evolutionarily. That like, I don't think that there is an argument with that. What I do hold umbrage with is the idea that we can definitively make any sort of statements about why we're doing something now based on that evolution, if that makes any sense.
It does. I think I recall seeing one video that described it in quite a fair manner, I'd say, as just so stories. And as you say, it's kind of like a lot of post hoc rationalization and a lot of basing on, well, this seems to make sense, but how can we really test this? And again, considering that, well, all science can be abused. All science can be used in ways to justify whatever extreme opinion or position or bigotry that you have. Hence why transphobes constantly go on about, science they don't nearly understand. So I was just, having these two minds of understanding how something like a field like evolutionary psychology can be very valuable in helping to understand why we have certain behaviors, like, say, our cravings for specific types of nutrition, while also still recognizing that, those who try to use it as, justification for, shit like social Darwinism has less to do with the science itself and more to do with them being terrible people.
Yeah, I think that's probably a little bit of cherry picking too. So I think that the field itself is a little bit prone to attaching way too much confidence to something that is solely a hypothesis. So people gather together enough information that they feel like they have a really good hypothesis based on that information, but there's not a lot of really great ways to test that hypothesis because you can't test it against things that have already happened. So it never really exits the hypothesis stage for me, and I'm not sure how it can. But the problem is that, like, in the field, and not even just in the field, more so in the public, I think, because in the field, they're mostly gathering together this information to, like, formulate what they think are, like, really well-supported hypotheses. And they publish a paper saying, like, this is why I think this hypothesis is supported. They can't really test it in any, like, really robust fashion. And then people kind of grab onto it, but they grab onto just what they think that the conclusion of that hypothesis is without fully understanding the field or what the paper says. And then they tend to use it to support their conclusions as they engage with society, as though it is the type of, like, harder science that neuroscience is.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's just like how transphobes will use a third grade understanding of biology to try and justify that sex is somehow immutable and defining of everything that we are, when the reality is far more complicated. And while you can probably get through life via that basic understanding, recognizing the complexities and that there is often more to the story than we are taught in school just to get an understanding of the concept, I think is really important. And while I really recognize the value of criticizing, evolutionary psychology when it is abused in that fashion, I also think that we need to realize that this is not something that is unique to evolutionary psychology specifically, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that you're probably right, because I think with any field, I don't think it's always a problem with the field. I think it's the problem with a layperson's understanding and misuse of the information that they're kind of cherry picking from the field. Make some sense. Like, I don't think that you can discount the viability of the entire field of evolutionary psychology. I don't think that you can just say, well, that is not a worthwhile endeavor. I don't think that that is something that we should do. But I can say with confidence, because it's in this sort of wishy-washy area, but is portrayed as though it's like a hard science and that we definitively, like, know these things. Like, I think Jordan Peterson references it a lot, and I'm sure that that's the type of person that you're familiar with, that, like, looks back to evolutionary psychology and finds something that he can say with relative confidence based on something that was in a study once that was in the field. And then people like grasp onto that as though, well, you're arguing with science if you argue against this. That is problematic, but they're misunderstanding the way that the research is done and the way that the presentation of the facts are formulated. A lot of it is an endeavor to like explain the trends in social psychology and individual psychology that we've seen through time by contextualizing it within social and physiological evolution of the human race. And that is something that we should look at, like we should explore more, but it is a very young field and it is very difficult to quantify. And it is really, really hard to like robustly test hypotheses, but that doesn't mean that that's not something that we should look at. It doesn't even mean that it's not something that we shouldn't find value in, like the information that derives from it, but it means that we should be, skeptical of a lot of the conclusions that come out of it and not just hang our hat on them as though that's a definitive statement that has been scientifically like sussed out that we can just now perceive as absolute fact. That is not the way to deal with that field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also comes down in large part to the classic is-ought problem. A lot of science can explain what is, but that is not necessarily a statement over what is ought to be. So just as we can understand why we, as the example I keep bringing up, why we may crave certain nutrition over others that is now in abundance, it's not to say that that particular nutrition is bad or that wanting to seek out that nutrition is bad, but more so we need to understand it in the broader context of the subject that is nutrition, all things in moderation. And so, just as, getting a McDonald's burger, for instance, once in a while isn't going to kill you, but getting it like every day for several years is probably going to do damage to your health. We can look at a lot of scientific topics like evolutionary psychology and understand, okay, this is where we came from. How can we use this to inform where we go from here and why we might come to some conclusions rather than have it dictate it?
Yeah, okay. I think that's fair. I mean, I could give you an example even. So a lot of the ideas that come out of evolutionary psychology can actually kind of be looked at by other fields. So out of the field of evolutionary psychology came the initial concept that, okay, so maybe us like kind of gaining control of fire and cooking our meat had something to do with our brain development. Like maybe that, because it seems that there was kind of like a paradigm shift in how humans like thought and function in and around that like piece of evolutionary time. Like perhaps there's a connection there. And they were actually able, from a neuroscience perspective, to test like what the ability to like cook proteins, and from a biological perspective, like the ability to cook food we know and can demonstrate took parasites out of the foods, which caused us to be less ill. So that helped us be like, that helped our fecundity because we were going to be able to reproduce more because we survived longer and were around longer to protect our young. And we were also able to kind of look through neuroscience based on this type of hypothesis and see that, oh, okay, well, if you cook a protein and then you imbibe that, like, and then you like ingest it, sorry, imbibe would be drink, and then you ingest it and you digest it, it's actually easier for you to metabolize a lot of the important components of that protein that help to contribute to the production of neurotransmitters. Like that is just a fact. Is if you're eating raw meat, it's not as easy to metabolize and there's more parasites. And if you're eating cooked meat, it is easier to metabolize and is is easier and has less parasites. So that is something that we can suss out using other fields. That's the hypothesis that like looking through evolutionary psychology, we were able to kind of understand that that's something that we might want to look at and contest elsewhere, which is why I think the field itself is valuable. But I think people overextend it like to a vast degree. And they say, oh, okay, well, I'm looking at these like 6 or 7 data points, and I've formed a hypothesis about these 6 or 7 data points. And if I filter it through the lens of evolutionary psychology, then I can say with some sort of authority that, you know, trans people are mentally ill, or women are inferior, or society should be run by men. Like those types of things, I don't think are robustly tested. It's like an abuse of the field, and the field is valuable. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that would be exceptionally foolish because there's valuable information coming from that field. And just because people that aren't in the field are misusing information that comes from the field in order to push their own agenda, that doesn't mean the field itself isn't valuable. It just means that people are, you know, doing a people and being assholes about stuff that they misunderstand or don't understand or are dunning the fuck out of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the whole time you were talking about that, my mind immediately went to veganism, because whether you eat meat or not, you could easily abuse what you were just talking about to try and shame people who are vegans for whatever reason. Whereas that's completely like being extremely narrow and cherry picking the very specific data about how we gained an advantage through getting our nutrition through meat to extrapolate on a social level that, well, we must eat meat. When, so long as you're getting the correct nutrition at the end of the day, then whatever food you eat to get that, and you're not making yourself ill, that should matter more than whether it comes from meat or plant or whatever. And so I think that's a perfect place to kind of round off this conversation. You know, as I was saying before, that it helps us understand why we are and can inform our choices, but it is not the be-all, end-all dictation of said choices.
No, because it's just not robustly testable enough for the field itself, I think, to be able to form any like really conclusive statements. It's a field that, in my mind, and I'm sure people who are in evolutionary psychology are going to come in, and the behaviorists and me were like this in university too. Me and the behaviorists didn't get along because I don't think that you can form super duper robust conclusions that are like that don't have a replication issue. And certainly in that field. But that doesn't mean that it's not giving you all kinds of valuable information that you can work from and incorporate into other hypotheses and use as building blocks. And that's just as valuable, I think.
Yeah, 100%. That's the basis for pretty much all science. We can use this data we've observed and make conclusions of it, but we can also challenge it and use it to build of similar conclusions, so long as we are strictly understanding it from the context of this is what we've observed happening, but it isn't like the complete picture, if you will. It's not a complete guide to life. Let's just say that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally agree. Yeah. Pip, it was a delight talking to you. Well, Trevor, did you have anything? I'm sorry, I never shut the fuck up.
No, that's great. That's your field of expertise, not mine. But no, that's completely right. I mean, even just thinking of like, I remember I told a Christian friend of mine once that I'm like, yeah, of course evolution is real. And he's like, but you support gay people. How does that work evolutionarily? And I'm like, what are you talking about? So like, because you know, two men can't reproduce. It's sorry, that reminded me of that. It's not really on topic, but It's like, this doesn't matter. Like,
because we totally don't have enough babies in this world. Absolutely not.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. And everybody, if they had the choice, would just be gay, and nobody would have any. There would be no population to evolve.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that just betrays people.
New scientific law: be gay, do crime. Got it.
Yeah.
That's my personal mantra. I wish it was scientific.
Oh yeah.
If you're a delight. Thank you for calling and having a conversation.
Yeah, it's been lovely talking to you. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest of your show.
Have a good day. See you later. Aw, they were lovely. All right.
That was awesome.
It's time for me to do the announcements. I have to crack my knuckles and warm up. I'm the worst at doing the announcements. Let's see. I can do this. All right.
You got it.
We have a Patreon that you can join, and it's patreon.com/call the line. Call the line is all one word. If you would like to support people like me doing this show, you can support us over on patreon.com/call the line, and call the line is all one word. We also have upcoming shows this week. Many of them are significantly better at doing the announcements than I am. And by many of them, I mean literally all of them. We have Tuesday at 6 p.m. and these times are Central, Chewed Gum with Eve Was Framed, who is back. And I'm so excited from all of her adventures, and Stacey Grunn, who are going to be hosting this week. Then we have, The Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and some guy named Paulogia. Paulogia will be hosting The Hang Up this week at 6 p.m. with Matt Dillahunty. And then we have my favorite show, the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Josie and Luxander. Oh, I love Luxander, they're great. Everybody should tune in just to see Lux, because I think they're awesome. And then on Sunday, we have 2 shows, not one, but 2 shows on Sundays. Now at 2 p.m., we have the Sunday show with Matt Dillahunty and Arden Hart. And then at 7 p.m., we have After Dark with Paulogia and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. So tune in to see the rest of our shows this week. This Paulogia guy is all over the place. And it's really, his name's really hard to pronounce. It's difficult. You should change his name. That's rough. And also, just to mention, for those of you who do join our Discord, we have a podcast, and the host of the podcast is Jimmy Snow. Each episode, which is at least one a week, he calls another creator. He hasn't called me yet, and I'm literally terrified of the day that happens. And if you might want to join the Patreon, because that day is coming soon. I can't keep dodging his calls. He calls another creator and has an impromptu discussion, and then gives them a quiz, which if they ace, they win a prize on behalf of a patron. And the episodes go out to patrons first, and only patrons can win prizes and leave comments, which we will be reading on the air. There's free patrons and Discord only patrons, and they get shows 2 weeks later. Oh, they get shows 2 weeks later. If you're a free patron, or if you're a Discord only patron, you get shows 2 weeks later. See, this is why I shouldn't do the announcement. We should just get the guests to do the announcements when I'm on, because I'm the worst. The YouTube channel members will get it on a delay. There's 2 episodes that are out so far with Apostasy and Eve Was Framed, and it's the greatest podcast alive. Nailed it. I really feel like I nailed all of that. All right, perfect. Trevor, are you ready to take another call? We have a couple more. And the lines are still open, and we do have open lines, especially open lines for theists. So if you're a theist, don't be scared. Don't be afraid. We will be nice. We're Canadians.
Yes.
We're Canadian here. So you don't need to be afraid. We will be
the
nice.
All Canada show, so you're good.
It's the Canada takeover today.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
We are going to talk to Jasper, who is also from Canada. Hello, Jasper. You were on SkepTalk on the line. What would you like to talk about today?
Hi. Sorry, I'm very nervous.
You're nervous.
Now
You're right.
I have some theist friends, and they my atheist deconversion story is one in a million. Like, not say 1 in a million, one of millions. It's all the same. Like, I grew up fundamentalist. I came to the age of reason, realized it was all wrong, and then left. But these people that I have very deep relationships with still believe in it. It's like a cult-like following, even more so than I ever was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when in conversation with them, they say stuff like very bumper sticker, like the universe was made mature, or science is always changing, we can't trust it. And these responses are like often said in response to evidence that they can't either cope with or refute, or and I don't know if I'm too dumb, but I struggle when they say like the Earth is made mature, because like I don't know if I struggle finding information online. I'm not looking in the right areas. Like, to me, when that answer would make God deceptive, kind of, but I don't know where else to go from that. Like, it's like I don't know how to like expand upon those avenues, I guess. I'm just calling it for, I guess, help or some enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I go to with that one. It's the lying God thing. If God put the dinosaur fossils in the stone to trick us, then he's a liar. If God put evidence in our DNA for evolution, but there wasn't evolution, then God's a liar. Things like that. There's also last Thursdayism. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like a satire religion, I guess, kind of like the flying spaghetti monster. But the idea is that we were all created last Thursday with our memories of who we are. So it's the same exact principle, where if you think about that, then that's just as plausible as God creating a mature Earth.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. I guess I have a few more. So like, it's like the ideas of like, who are we to question God, or God is too big to even think about. Sorry, I'm reading off a thing I wrote down here, so I wouldn't mess this up too bad.
Okay.
Or we are the finite, guessing at the infinite. It's like stuff like that. I personally find it really hard to engage with, because it's like I feel like the conversation just ended there, because it's like I don't know where to go from there, and I don't know how to. I just don't know.
And I could be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, like, I could be wrong, but it feels like that is a conversation ender. Like, that's the point of it. They don't want to discuss further. It's like, but you can, like, because God is supposed to want to have a relationship with us, so there should be at least some understanding of him if he wants us to have that relationship with him. So, that's kind of where I go for. It's like, if he doesn't want us to understand him, then he wouldn't have made a book trying to get us to understand him, right? Like, there should be something that makes sense about him. So questioning it shouldn't be a problem for a God who wants a relationship and apparently has reached out to have that relationship.
Okay. Do I have time for just a couple more?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Go ahead.
So my buddy, not so much his wife. His wife is very much more like, she just believes in like Jesus, and that's kind of just where she doesn't believe in any of the Old Testament or any of that stuff. And it's like, I don't really have many conversations with her over it, but my friend, he says like, well, even if Christianity is false, it's still a better way to live. And I'm just like, that is not true, but like, I don't.
Oh, I'd go Bible hard on that. I'd go deep in the Bible. I would say, get your Bible now. Let's have a sit. Let's have a sit. And I would go to the test for the unfaithful wife. I would go to Jephthah. I would go to women aren't allowed to speak in church. I would go to a lot of the rape passages. I would go to dash the babies against the rocks. Like even just the things that God says to do. That's better way to live. How? Like, I would want to explore deeply. Is that just an assumption that's predicated on what you've been told? Or is that an informed opinion based on the actual scriptures themselves? Because if you attempt to formulate a way to live your life based on the scriptures themselves, I don't even know what that would look like. I'm terrified of what that would look like, because I don't think people ever actually do. I think they think they do. They think they do, but they don't, because there's so much contradiction in it that ultimately they have to figure out which way to go, one way or the other themselves, based on their own personal intuition and education about how to exist in society, and that informs their decision. It's not the scripture informing their decision. It's them using the scripture to kind of maybe like figure out which way to go if they're at an impasse. But for the most part, the scriptures contradict each other so much on how to live your life. Like, ask him if he wears mixed fabrics. Ask him if he's ever eaten a shrimp. Like, there's just no way that's true.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and I try to like point out. I think it's like Leviticus 25, or it's the one about like the taking slaves from the nations around you. I don't remember exactly which one, and I point that out, or talk about how to stone your children, or it's just like it just it feels like I'm just banging my head against the wall, and like it's like he engages in the conversation, so he's not like he's not like rude or apprehensive, or like it does engage, I guess. Well, not honestly, but he tries to. I guess he doesn't intellectually engage in it
As honestly as he knows how to, probably.
Yeah.
As honestly as he knows how, and I care so much about him. I've known him like like basically my entire life. Like, we're childhood friends, but it's like just some of the ideas he espouses, and it's like I wouldn't call him like transphobic, but he's very like apprehensive to like be accepting of new things. And it's like, and a lot of his like, I wouldn't call it hate. Like, he loves people, but it's like a lot of his, I don't know, his ideas are just so intertwined with like his religion that like I feel that he would just be a better person if he just wasn't religious. Like, it just, and it's I don't know.
I get that. Yeah. I have family and friends like that too, where it's like, I see the heart. I see that you want to be a good person, but you have this religion wall that you hit that doesn't allow you to be the good person you want to be. And if you could just remove that wall, but there's reasoning and there's justification for why they have to stay in that faith, because it's a security blanket and it's what they know, and it's the life they know, and you know, there's that fear of the unknown if you do walk away. So it's hard to get through that.
Deconstruction is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, anybody who's gone through it.
Terrifying for me.
Yeah. Like, I don't think any of it, which I think I would hope gives us empathy towards people like that, because we can look back and see a time in our lives where we were ourselves and thought we were good people and truly believed it, but probably had some overlapping beliefs that now we've deconstructed and reconfigured and really informed through a far better lens, in my opinion. But we didn't have a better lens then. Like, they have one lens to look through. They have one scaffolding in which to frame the world, and they have to fit everything into it. My scaffolding is infinite now. I mean, before it was finite. And his is still finite. That's difficult to grapple with. Like, you have to build a lot of walls to retain it and still believe you're a good person, especially if you want to be, which a lot of people do want to be. So you have to make a lot of internal justifications that are dissonant. And that's hard to live with.
Yeah. Like, I guess, sorry.
No, go for it.
Were you going to say something? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. You're good.
Okay. Not to go to beat these previous questions over again, but like, I kind of want to, like, what would you guys say to like when he bumper sticker answers, science is always changing, so we can't like trust it. And I've explained it's just like, dude, like it's like, it's not like a house of cards where like you take one part out and it all falls down. Like, that's you. It's like, it's more like a pyramid where like, this one block is not quite as good, so we're going to take it out and put a new block in, right? But just because we remove one little block doesn't cause the whole thing to come crashing down, right? There's so many other things, but I don't know if I'm using bad analogies or I'm using bad, like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, because I feel like I've presented this guy a really good case, and like, it's just not working.
Well, what
Science
I find,
changing is the most beautiful thing about it,
Yeah.
right? Like the most
Yes.
beautiful thing about science is that it's subject to change. Science
Yes,
gives
it
you
makes
the
it
best
honest.
possible answers given the information that's available to you. And then when you get new information, you incorporate that into the framework and you change your mind. That's what's beautiful about it, is that you can recognize when you're wrong and correct it.
Yeah.
Religion is whatever the opposite of that is, because whatever new information you have to either throw it away if it doesn't fit into the framework or corrupt it so that it does. I would
Right.
rather have the framework where if I'm introduced to new information, I change my mind, as opposed to the framework where if I'm introduced to new information, I have to figure out how to corrupt it so that it can exist within the framework that I refuse to get rid of, or refuse to believe the new information because it doesn't fit into the framework.
Yeah.
Like I said, but my framework is now infinite in every conceivable direction. Whatever information I come across, if I can verify the veracity of it, I can incorporate it seamlessly, effortlessly. Changing my mind is now my favorite thing to do because it was so goddamn hard before. Because I
Yes.
wasn't just incorporating the information, I was figuring out, how does this fit? How do I jam this in to something that I already need to believe? Like, what if it doesn't fit? Then what? I don't have to jam it into a tiny box anymore. I just go, oh, okay. Well, now I'm just going to put this over here in my new information area and augment slightly how I think about this thing. That's cool. Now I know something new. And and then I just exist after that without a problem.
I always think of like, if you know somebody who never changes their mind, it's either that they've never been wrong, or that they refuse to admit that they've been wrong.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Poignant.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's just and like that's definitely your guys' presentation of that. Those ideas are definitely better than ones that I present of him. But I try to explain like my beliefs. I guess bouncing off what you guys are saying, like my beliefs are only like my belief in something is only as like the strength of my belief is only predicated on the strength of the evidence, right? It's like like as long as there's strong evidence for it, that's how strong my belief is, right? If there's no evidence for something, it's like I don't know, let's say something silly. Like while I think that Atlantis is a cool idea, there's no evidence for it, so I have no belief in it. It's like I entertain these kind of funny ideas as just like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but I don't actually believe it. But it's like but his thinking is so black and white, and it's so like I guess I'm struggling like what caused me to break my black and white thinking, right? Because I was just as bad as he was, I think, in his black and white thinking. Like this, I have to fit into my framework, but like I don't know if I'm just more intellectually honest with myself, or like I just wish there was a blueprint to like helping people see that these beliefs are like damaging to other people and wrong.
Yeah. Well,
sorry,
I'm
calling in. It's like just ranting a little bit and just like expressing my frustrations. But
those are good questions.
Yeah, and like I think too, I don't know what your experience was, but for me, it wasn't until I allowed myself to ask the questions and I allowed myself to be open to new information. So that's what it could be with them too. Like your friend may need to just have that moment of themselves. Like there could be nothing you could say. And I'm not saying don't ever say anything, but it could be that there's nothing you could ever say. It has to be their decision. Like, okay, I actually want to look into this and I actually want to believe what is true. That's not an easy decision to come to for anyone. But it is something where it might just have to be their decision.
And you ultimately never know what you might say that might or might not be the catalyst. Like my deconversion had nothing to do with anybody. I was not even looking for deconversion. I was looking for affirmation. I wanted
Same.
my faith to be strengthened. I was going through a rough time and I was like, my faith is going to be what's up. That's where I'm going to turn, because the more I learn about the word, the better things are going to be for me. So I am going to throw myself all in. And just that choice. It wasn't anybody ever challenging me. Ever.
Yeah.
That's what did it for me. So everybody comes by it a different way, and some people may never. The most important thing when you're engaging with people, I think, especially people that are important to you, is to make sure that you're supportive of them and that, you know, they're not harming people. And if they are, that you call them out for harming people. That I think is the most important thing. I don't think that wanting someone to deconvert is worth threatening the relationship with them any more than wanting you to convert is you would think is worth threatening a relationship with you, because belief is such a personal thing. But if they're open for these conversations, it's good to have them well. So I appreciate you reaching out. Not that we're necessarily always having them well. Sometimes I fail.
Same.
But yeah, but the curiosity and the seeking out ways to have these conversations better means that you do care about this person and that you do want to have these conversations well. So I hope that they do become more fruitful, but you shouldn't hang yourself on wanting to deconvert them. You should want them to be a good person and you guys to have a good relationship. Like that should be the priority. Otherwise, you're going to create a polarizing environment unless they are actively hurting somebody, and then go get them.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
100
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm just thinking if you have any more questions or statements. What would you say to somebody, because his wife is very like not fundamentalist, or maybe that's not the right term. She's very not Old Testament, I guess. She's like very just Jesus. And I don't really know how to like engage with somebody who's like that, because I came from such a fundamentalist perspective that when one piece fell away, it all came crashing down. But for her, she doesn't engage with it in the same capacity. So it's like, it's just, I don't know. Like, what would you say to somebody who like only basically believes in Jesus, and that's it? And if you're only doing good, then that's it. Like, she's a super nice person, super caring person, but yeah, doesn't believe in any of the Old Testament. Maybe even just a few things in the New Testament. It's just Jesus. It's hard for me to like wrap my mind around.
Are the messages that she took from Jesus all like the good, like do unto others and
Just the good,
you know, love thy neighbor? And if she seems harmless to me. Like I wouldn't actively attempt to deconstruct somebody like that. Like I wouldn't take it upon myself. I wouldn't make it my mission to try to deconstruct somebody like that in my real life, because that's just going to impact my relationship with that person. Like I just wouldn't. And people will probably disagree with me in the comments section, but I'm not a crusader like that. Like if somebody is a demonstrably good person, and I've had conversations with them about their belief, and they're just like, I just believe all the nice things Jesus said about how we should all be good to each other. Great.
Yeah, and that's exactly what she's like.
Good. Okay.
So unless she comes to
then.
you, like, if she came to you and said, hey, I'm starting to have doubts, what are your thoughts on this or this or this? Like, that's one thing, but I wouldn't actively.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I'm out for questions now. I really appreciate your guys' insight. It means a lot.
No problem, Jasper. Have a good rest of your day.
All right.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah. Go Canada. Have a good one.
Go Canada.
Go Canada. Go Edmonton. Go Oilers. Oilers.
See you guys.
We can do it. Yeah. I might believe in God if we pull off an X3 straight, actually. That might do it for
Imagine.
me. Could you imagine? Oh my God. Tomorrow night. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Everybody, thoughts and prayers.
All right.
And prayers. All right. Have a good night, Jasper. Talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Oh, that's rough.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
trying to like figure that stuff out is always the hardest.
Yeah.
All right, we actually have we have a theist caller on the line. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Okay.
I can do this.
Perfect. All right. Let's go. Let's talk to Jackie. Hi, Jackie. You were
Hello?
on SkepTalk on the line. What would you like to talk about today?
So I would like to be discussing Jungian archetypes as evidence for the existence of the supernatural. By any chance, are you familiar with the psychologist named Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
So basically, the analysis of religious archetypes I've heard from him is effectively that because each of us have certain personality traits that reflect, I guess you say, Jungian archetypes, like the idea that there's this collective unconscious and archetypes that ring throughout history. From a psychoanalytic perspective, the character traits and stories found in biblical stories are examples of revelation of these Jungian archetypes, and these are actualized effectively in the real world as part of our collective unconscious.
What do you mean from a psychoanalytic perspective? What do you mean from a psychoanalytic
from
perspective?
a Jungian
Describe a psychoanalytic psychoanalysis isn't Jungian. Describe a psychoanalytic perspective for me. What's a
I thought Jung was
psychoanalytic
a psychoanalyst. Was that?
It was I believe it was like a.
Sorry, what was your question?
Sociologist. What is psychoanalysis? Didn't derive from Jung, derived from Freud. So describe a psychoanalytic perspective. You said that Jungian archetypes are evidence for a psychoanalytic perspective that God exists.
Archetypes are evidence for the existence of the supernatural. I said they're evidence for the existence of the supernatural, not evidence for psychoanalysis.
From a okay,
but
sure.
I thought Jungianism was.
Sorry, I don't have whatever you wrote down in front of me, so I was going from memory. So the psychoanalytic perspective. What's a psychoanalytic perspective? Because that is what's propping up your claim. What's a psychoanalytic perspective?
Well, my understanding of basically Jungian psychoanalysis is that he believes personality traits are developed through a collective unconscious. And those are manifest.
That's not what psychoanalysis is.
All behavior.
At all. That's not what
I might be wrong, but I thought Jung was considered a psychoanalyst.
No,
but either way, it doesn't matter what term we use. What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter. Okay,
it does. So if you're using that term
matter.
in order to demonstrate what you're saying, so from a so you're saying that from a psychoanalytic perspective wasn't an important part of the statement that you just made?
No, the term psychoanalysis is just a term. I'm just saying the theory that Carl Jung proposed about a collective unconscious, in my estimation, points to the existence of a supernatural transcendent force which has done revelation within the minds of human beings. That's all I'm claiming.
Okay, so you think that Jung proposed that there was a collective unconscious, and that means that there's a God.
Yeah, defining God as a being who transcends being and becoming the object-subject dichotomy of the material world.
All right, well, let's get there. Let's you and I get there. So we can take Carl Jung out of the equation because who he was and what he proposed doesn't matter. So you're just saying that the collective unconscious exists, right? There's a collective unconscious, and that exists.
Yeah. And
okay, what's that? What does that look like? Describe
the collective unconscious exists. So the collective unconscious, unconscious is the unconscious element of the human psyche, which manifests archetypes which are universal throughout human nature.
So the collective unconscious is us recognizing specific archetypes?
Yes, so these are
what archetypes specifically? Because an archetype is an infinitely descriptive term. Like you can almost anything can be an archetype, right? So what do you understand an archetype to be?
So I believe, archetype, we can go, it's hard to define. Archetype is like...
It's part of your definition of why God exists, so you should be able to define it. What's an archetype?
An archetype is part of, the way I would describe it, is an archetype is an idealized form that in human beings psychologically strive towards becoming, and
An archetype is
this
just a
is
typical
manifest in their
example of
behavior.
something. No, that's not what archetype means. An archetype is just a typical example of something. That's what archetype means. It means typical example.
But I'm talking about specifically archetype in the young. I'm talking about specifically archetype in the unconscious or
in the Jungian model. In the Jungian model, it means specific example. So when Jung is talking about
and I believe
archetypes, what do you think he's talking about? When Jung is saying that we recognize archetypes, what do you think he means? From a sociological perspective.
I'm not a psychologist, right? I'm only 16 years old. I don't have a psychology degree. But to my understanding of Jung, to my understanding, he believes each human being is born with an aspect of the psyche that when they grow up, they will realize patterns or archetypes that are typical to other human beings throughout their culture, and then beyond the culture realm, going back far enough to human civilization as a whole. I might be wrong about that, but that's my understanding.
Okay, so what Jung is saying, for the most part, is that there are specific archetypes that resonate with people, right? So, like the hero archetype is an archetype that consistently resonates with people. Like, it's a story about a typical type of person that is resonant, that will elicit a relatively common emotional reaction in people. So if you look at like the story of Jesus, or you look at Superman, or you look at Hercules, or you look like that, which is why we see them throughout time, right? So we see like the story of Hercules, and we see like the Epic of Gilgamesh, and we see the story of Jesus, we see Muhammad. You could say John Smith is the same type of thing, like hero's journey type stories. That's an archetype that's resonant with people. That's an archetype that people find aspirational, right? People look at that and they say, "Oh, like that. That is something that I recognize as potentially aspirational."
Yeah, you're
with me there. Are we in agreement there?
So, yes, we're complete. Yeah, we're in agreement. We're in agreement. I understand what you're saying. But what I'm trying to explain is. Just to move on, because we've already established.
We don't need to move. No. We're not moving on, Jackie. Jackie, we're not moving on. We're not moving on because you're not gonna blow through to the next part of whatever it is that you were already ready to say. We're going to explore the concept that you already introduced, and the concept you already introduced was Jungian archetypes. And if Jungian archetypes are psychoanalytic, which I think there's a disconnect there, evidence or whatever for God, then we need to actually really suss out what that means. So Jungian archetypes we just described, and you agreed with me. So I won't repeat myself again because you already called me out on that. So I'm going to assume that you understand. So all he is saying is that these are aspirational archetypes that people recognize, and therefore what? Recognize and can affiliate themselves with. And that's what he means by collective unconscious. He means that en masse, when people see this, there's a sort of collective agreement on a societal level that these are the types of stories that we have the same sort of reactions to and understanding of. That's what he's saying. And I agree with that.
So what I'm going,
and you agree with that.
What I'm going to be,
therefore, God, because
please let me speak. You're monologuing. So basically,
Jackie,
what I
I'm
believe
going to get
is
exceptionally frustrated with you because I didn't interrupt you. I was still speaking when you interrupted me to tell me I was monologuing. I don't want to mute you, and I'm usually one of the most patient. But if you are going to be condescending, you have picked the wrong pony, my friend. So, therefore, God, because why?
For 10 minutes, repeating yourself at least 3 times now, and you've added nothing to the
Jackie, therefore, God, because why? Your turn, go.
Because, so according to the Kabbalists, if you're familiar with Kabbalah, which is a form of Jewish mysticism, there is Sephiroth, which are basically apostasies of God's nature. What I believe is that when God created human beings, he gave them a soul which reflects these apostasies, and the Kabbalists list 12. I can't list the 12 because I'm not an expert in Kabbalah, but so the Hasidic masters talked about how although God's essence is the same with or without human beings, God's manifestation within reality requires a conscious entity, and I would argue that the hypotheses of God that the Kabbalah present are reflected in human character traits.
So
Okay,
you
cool.
believe
what's
something.
soul? And also, that's the linchpin on that is soul. So now you have to prove the soul.
Yeah.
You know, Carl Jung himself praised the Maggid of Mezrich, who was one of the first Hasidic rabbis.
I couldn't give one sweet rat fuck what Carl Jung said about shit.
Yeah.
So you
without
just
evidence.
said that in the Kabbalah that the something soul, right? So now you're saying that in order for me to take on board anything that you just said, I also have to buy into the concept of the soul that's smuggled into your description, right? So I don't believe the concept of the soul is viable, plausible, provable, and I actually believe it's directly disprovable. So now you have to explain to me that the soul exists.
Where else do these Jungian archetypes originate, if not from the soul?
You really love Jung a lot. So I don't think Jungian archetypes exist because there's something that's recognizable as we live in a society, right? So society allows us to have these archetypes built in to our socialization. Like,
what's interesting
we're
too is that
socialized into a society. No, you go ahead.
No, what's interesting too is that Shannon explained all of this, but you wanted to shut her up so you can move on to the next thing, and now you're confused about it because you just said she was
repeating herself.
No, she wasn't, and even if she was, you weren't listening either way.
She said the same thing about 3 times. Yes,
then why did you need to ask? Then why did you need to ask about where it comes from, if not the soul? When she obviously already explained that. If you're not listening, you're not listening. It's one or the other. Either she's repeating herself and saying the same thing many times, or you're not listening because you want to get on to your next point.
She claimed they're well received in society, but she hasn't explained why. She just made the assertion it is, but that's not an explanation for the process. I agree to well received in society. Why is that the case?
So we're socialized in society to recognize specific archetypes. So if I'm understanding, what you're taking umbrage with is the fact that you think that these archetypes, the only way that these archetypes would be unilaterally recognizable and related to is if there was something inherent in us that was like divinely placed inside of us that was cause for us to recognize them, right? So you're saying that there must be a soul, because otherwise, why would we look at hero stories? Why would we recognize these archetypes and see them as aspirational unilaterally? Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say there's strong evidence indicating that. And the reason, if you want to know why, is because these archetypes which exist don't just exist in similarly socialized societies. So, for example, the hero archetype may have existed in Europe, and it also existed in African cultures, and existed in Native American cultures, and existed in Chinese culture. And I highly doubt that somehow these same archetypes all went throughout all these same societies when they were massively geographically separated, unless there was some sort of divine backing beforehand.
So what do all of those societies have in common, do you think? And it's a really, the answer is almost too easy. Right. I was just going to say the answer is almost too easy. We're all human beings. Right? Every single one of us.
Yes.
In all of the societies. All of us are human. So do you think that it might be the case that there's something else that all these societies have in common? What's another, what's one other thing? They're all, what else? What else do they have in common that might be relevant here?
I mean, the hero archetype is just one example. I could think of other archetypes, but no, I don't.
No.
Other than them human beings.
Let's not get back on archetypes. Aside from just being human beings, one of the things that societies have in common is that everybody within that society needs to be able to coexist. In order to coexist in society, something like a hero who's willing to sacrifice himself for others is intuitively aspirational, right? That's intuitively aspirational. If you exist in a group of people whose entirety of survival is based on everybody cooperating and everybody protecting each other from any sort of exterior threat, and you have the type of person who is willing to step up to be that protector, they would be someone that is looked up to because they're protecting everybody else. And that it would also be something that's aspirational because other people would want to be looked up to. That's not magic. That's common sense.
I never proposed the existence of magic.
Well, you propose the existence of the supernatural, which is basically a synonym. So that is just something that makes sense. The rest of it seems like a really elaborate song and dance to explain something that's kind of intuitively really straightforward. And it smuggles in all kinds of other things. Like, we still didn't get back to the concept of the soul. Like, the soul's not a viable concept. You have to just believe it because it's the only thing that allows the rest of it to be packaged. But the soul itself isn't a concept that you could just wave away. It's an incredibly complex and nuanced concept that needs to be explored in and of itself before you can accept all the other things that you're adding on. You can't just go yada, 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 we have a soul, blah, 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 blah.
Well, for common agreement, how would you define a soul?
I don't think the soul exists. I don't think that there's a definition of the soul that's viable. I don't think there's a definition of the soul that's viable.
The way I personally define a soul is an aspect of human existence which is transcendently granted and that exists in each individual. That's not part of our material existence.
That's not part of our material existence. That would be the part that I have issue with. The rest of it just sounds like consciousness to me. And also that doesn't interact with your claim that there is a collective consciousness, because it would need to be linked to others, not just be individual. Otherwise, otherwise your own definition of the soul causes everything that you're talking about to fall apart.
Well, I believe we're all descendants of Adam and Eve.
What does that have to do with the collective consciousness?
Because I believe when God formed Adam and then formed Eve out of Adam's rib, that he blew in a soul, or in Hebrew, a neshama, into each human being, and that goes to each offspring. And I believe that soul has attributes of God's hypostases manifesting in people's character traits.
And they're all connected how? So that there's a collective consciousness.
Well, because if those hypotheses that are part of each of those character traits, because they're part of a soul, there's certain archetypes that their personality traits would similarly be well receptive to.
So that there's not a collective consciousness, then you're just describing that there's similarities that might make people receptive. They're not connected with each other in any way then, right?
Because, don't we
not
see
in any
similarities? Don't we see similarities in all species?
I would believe. What was that?
No, I was saying, don't we see similarities in all species? Like if you see a pack of lions in one area and a pack of lions in another, you're going to see similarities between the two. Do they have a soul then?
Correct.
They have a structure.
I don't believe God. I don't have faith that God blew in them a soul.
Then why do they have similarities in the way they structure their societies?
Personally, I'm an older creationist, so I do believe in evolutionary biology, and I do believe that they probably evolved to have certain adaptive traits which makes them similar. But that's not the same as consciousness or free will or archetypes which are manifest throughout history.
Why not?
I mean, it's just it's qualitatively different. A lion can choose something freely. It's an animal of instinct. It doesn't have rationality. It doesn't have reason. It doesn't have advanced communication. There are many qualitative differences between human beings and all other living organisms on Earth.
I don't know that that's necessarily true. There's differences for sure between each species, but no, they have as much decision-making abilities as we do, whether that's whether free will exists or not. Like they pretty much have that same level. They just might not have the same intellect in certain areas, but yeah, we have animal instincts as well. Like it's you're comparing, yeah, you're adding meaning to things that we do when other species do the same thing. Ants have societal structures. If you go from one anthill to another, they have different societal structures with a ruler, and like they have a queen, and then they have the worker ants. Is that because they have a soul that's directing kind of what they do in their society?
No, I don't believe it has soul, but I mean, I haven't heard of any actual Jungian psychologists. I haven't heard Jordan Peterson talk about like Jungian archetypes within non-human species. I mean, he has talked about like.
Have you ever listened to anybody other than Jordan Peterson? You keep referencing back to Jordan
William Lane
Peterson.
Craig,
I think you need to read a
Jaspers.
couple of different books.
Yeah, William Lane Craig, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Ben Shapiro. There are a couple of others.
Okay, well, Ben Shapiro doesn't know anything about psychology.
Yeah.
Like at all. He's a lawyer.
Well, I've read plenty of books.
Dostoevsky's been dead for a very, very long time and was a fiction writer. So I see that you have one locus of information, and I think that might be a problem for you, is that you have one locus of information. So, and it probably sounded appealing to you, and I can understand why listening to Jordan Peterson can sound appealing, like at first glance, because he uses a lot of very, very fancy language and has a PhD, and therefore what he says must be well informed. However, when it's held up to scrutiny, a lot of it kind of falls apart. Like there's some things that you've said even today, like you're now kind of, not without even realizing it, special pleading a bit. You're saying that humans are a special kind of creation. All of the rest of everything on Earth and in the universe was created and evolved and has formed into societal structures, but is somehow very, very, very different and unique from humans. We are set apart for some reason. And that's a strange thing to say.
I mean, the Bible doesn't claim animals have a neshama like human beings have.
I don't care what the Bible claims. Yeah. The Bible also says all kinds of other bananas, bonkers things. It says that the earth is held up on pillars. It says that you should throw babies against rocks. So what the Bible says doesn't mean a great deal to me when we're talking about reality. When we're trying to discern reality, I think using the Bible as our starting point is a hindrance, not a help.
I've read some articles about more Freudian perspectives, but like the thing about Freud is that a lot of his theories about like how we're all these products of a material environment and all these things, and psychosexual development and the Oedipus complex, I think a lot of these things have been largely discredited by the broader psychological community.
They have. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. He was more like a jumping off point, like a founding father. He didn't have it all right, but he kind of kicked open the door and had got people to start thinking about it. And then other people came in and started doing all kinds of amazing work after him. And the field itself branched off in a multitude of directions, all the way up to neuroscience, which is my favorite personally. But which is why you won't hear somebody in the psychological field today, with few exceptions. Like there is some aspects of psychoanalysis that people are working in today that actually do have some viability, I think. Like you could look up as a neuroscientist who also works in psychoanalysis. His name is Mark Soms. He does some really great work, like integrating the two and like figuring out how psychoanalysis aspects of interpreting emotions actually integrates with like the conceptions that we have of consciousness from a neuroscience perspective. Like he does great work there from a psychoanalysis perspective. But Freud himself, I won't disagree with you. There's a lot of things that he said that I'm like, nah, bro. I mean, thanks for kicking down the door, but no.
Yeah.
I don't actually.
I
I'm
have
not
too
sad because
narrow
I
of a
want to have a
locus
big-
of information.
I'm so sorry. What did you just say?
I thought you said I have too narrow of a locus of information, but like what thinkers? Because it's
think-
not just Jordan Peterson. Like I said, William Lincoln, Soren Kierkegaard. There are a lot of philosophers who have inspired me. A lot from the religious existentialist perspective, especially.
Have they all informed your position here when it comes to talking about these archetypes? Because one, it sounds pretty cut and paste Jordan Peterson. Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah,
and also that's who you
Young
reference
and
back
Jordan
to
Peterson.
is either Young or Peterson in this conversation, which is why regarding this concept, I'm not saying like in your life in general, but regarding this concept that we're having a conversation about right now, it sounds to me as though it's the idea probably came from and is informed by Jordan Peterson's like lectures and podcasts and whatever, and his idea of archetypes and his conception of the soul, which is like a muddled conception of the soul that doesn't actually make a lot of sense under scrutiny. And then that, I think, by Christians is mapped onto Christianity. But if you listen to some of the other things that Jordan Peterson says, he's not the type of Christian that a lot of he's more of a cultural Christian who has this fuzzy sort of concept that archetypes are evidence that God to him is like the most aspirational thing you can be. It's not like necessarily a tangible actual being. It's the ultimate aspiration, which isn't Christianity at all. And then he ascribes to Christianity because he thinks that that's the closest to, through a series of archetypal stories, that you can get to his concept. So he's almost kind of created his own religion, and Christians look at him and say, he's one of us. And then they adopt his perspective because they think, yeah, he's fighting for us. But really, he's kind of creating this subset that is like just doesn't map onto Christianity at all. And a lot of like quote unquote real Christians look at him and they're like, don't. Like, I'm not sure if you saw his chat with Pints with Aquinas, who's a Catholic apologist, but he wasn't pleased with him because, so he wasn't particularly pleased with him because he thinks that Jordan Peterson is actually kind of taking people away from Christianity to almost what seems like his own religion that is kind of taking Christianity and making it Jordan Petersonianity. But like instead,
it's complicated because I've heard him describe it as God being a being which is beyond being and becoming. So, like in philosophy, there's a classic debate: are things being or becoming? And like my understanding of Heidegger is he was more of a philosopher being. Nietzsche was more of a philosopher becoming. Jordan Peterson has come as a philosopher beyond being and becoming. So, but this is very similar to what Karl Jaspers, who was one of the teachers of Hannah Arendt, described God as. So he's a Christian psychiatrist from, I believe, Switzerland or one of those countries. And basically the idea is God is not an object or subject, and therefore the idea that you to expect to communicate God through empirical research is not existent. So I see a lot of parallels there. Not quite the same,
but I agree with that.
I don't believe Peterson. But I don't believe Peterson doesn't believe in a higher God. I believe that his concept of a higher God is just a little bit more sophisticated than, let's say, a standard evangelical type fundamentalist.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like that he's converted you then. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like he's converted you, which is cool. All right. Like that's your religion now, is you've converted to Jordan Peterson's version of Christianity. He is like the Paul of this generation. I swear to God.
Yeah.
Because Paul took what Christ did, and Paul, like for real, like Paul, the Apostle Paul, took the message of Christ and the church that Peter was starting and was like, this is mine now. I'm in charge. I'm going to go out to the masses. And that's what Christianity functionally is now, is it's Paulianity. But now it's Petersonianity, where they're taking the concepts and it's just getting farther and farther away from the Bible into this really like obscure, abstract, like loosely references the Bible when it feels like it, just so that it can feel like it's connected to it, but actually has nothing the fuck to do with it whatsoever. And it's wild. But then when held under scrutiny, like when you hold somebody's feet to the fire, like if I said to you, Jackie, well, is the Bible true? You think Adam and Eve really existed? That's bananas. That's bananas, especially if you believe in evolution. That is
Yeah.
absolutely bananas.
I'm an older
I used to be in your shoes.
I believe.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah.
I
So
believe God
sorry.
created Adam and Eve, but
Go ahead.
was that? Yeah, no. I believe Adam and Eve were literal physical people. It's just I believe that happened billions of years ago. So I believe that the age
Were they the
described in
first
the
people with
Bible
souls?
is longer than. Yes. Well, I believe that. So
Were
it
they,
says
were
God
they the
created in
first
6
people
days.
made in the image of God?
They were the first two human beings made in the image of God.
Is sin a real concept, and was it derived from the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, I believe a place called the Garden of Eden existed.
And is that where sin was derived from? Based on an act against God of gaining knowledge?
I mean, I believe originally God intended for human beings to live in paradise, but I believe we live in a fallen world because of that sin. But I don't believe in the traditional concept.
Where does sin come from?
I don't believe in the traditional Christian concept of original sin. So I believe each human being can sin, but I believe that there's like the idea of a Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov, right? An evil inclination, a good inclination. I believe each human being is capable of good and is capable of evil. But I don't believe everyone's born
there was never a
sin in the
perfect
traditional
creation.
Christian.
God never made a perfect creation.
I mean, what do you mean by perfect? Garden of Eden was as perfect as human beings were ever idealized to get, but we don't live in
God
Garden
made
of
us
Eden
flawed
now.
on purpose. It wasn't through our choice that we became flawed. God made us flawed on
God
purpose.
is defined as an all-perfect being. How can God, as an all-perfect being, create something which is equally perfect as He is? God is, by definition, more perfect
if he's
than
all
anything
perfect, he could
creates.
easily create something just as perfect as he is, because he's all perfect. He could do whatever he wants. So, where did the concept of sin come from? Because your only choices are, and both of them aren't great, that God created Adam and Eve, and also, if you believe in evolution, you would have to believe that we had no souls for like millions and millions of years or whatever. And then all of a sudden an evolutionary branch came off and it was humans. And then suddenly God was like, bam, you two get it. But evidently they were the only two left, because there would have been humans elsewhere at the same time. So if he donned those two with souls, then why didn't all of the other humans
I'm a little bit
that
agnostic
existed on
on
Earth, did
what
they
aspects
not
of
get
Genesis
souls?
are allegorical.
And what about the people that procreated with them, if it was just Adam and Eve? And was there no sin before then, or was there no humans before then? Because what happened to all the humans that existed before Adam and Eve? Was there no sin for them? And if sin was not an existent term and God created us, he created us sinful. He purposefully created us knowing that he was potentially going to condemn us. And that has interactions with like the problem of evil for sure, because he was like, I'm going to torture you forever if you mess up, but also I'm going to make it so that you are almost inevitably going to mess up in myriad ways. Like, lots of that has problems, right?
I don't believe in eternal hell. I believe in reincarnation. This is described in the Zohar and the
You're
Zohar
the wildest
Hakadosh
kind of Christian.
and in the Kabbalah. And I believe that in Olam Haba, all human beings which observe what God has commanded them will have share in the world to come. But again, these are complex theological issues, and I'm not this great theologian. What I will say is that I believe God judges each human being to their ability. So a kid born in India who's a Hindu might not be judged the same as an Orthodox Jew born in Jerusalem who's raised very religious from birth. And that might not be burned for sort of agnostic person from Canada who's sort of Christian but didn't really have an education. Each individual has merit to them, and I believe God is not arbitrary. God is all-knowing, and God can judge each individual according to his will and to his proper judgment.
All right. It sounds like you've got a construction of religion that like it just isn't found anywhere, that you've kind of created for yourself. I'm going to let Trevor have the last word, and then we are going to let you go because we have to take at least one more call before the end of the show. So go, Trevor.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I had a question about how you think the soul works. I don't know if it applies now that I have this new information about your collage of religions. But because if we're able to have archetypes, sorry, because of the soul, then it does confuse me why there's more than one religion. Because if that's the main thing, God wants us to.
If you want to know a good representation of my beliefs, I would recommend reading Dr. Eric Neumann, who's an Orthodox Jewish Jungian psychologist. He wrote a book called The Origins of Consciousness and The Roots of Jewish Consciousness. They're both very dense books, but they cover a lot of basically what I believe.
Okay. Well, I guess, and the point too of trying to prove God through this, that I just want to say that didn't work on me, but maybe next time I'm on, you'll get me.
Yeah, I think you should call back again, but I think we should focus on something small each time.
Yeah.
Like, for sure, call back again.
I've called in before several times.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, have we talked before, Jackie? I have a brain of a fish.
I've called other shows in line before. I've called Forrest. I've called. Yeah.
Call and talk to me again. We'll have another chat. I host less because I suck and my life is busy. But call and we can have a chat and like pick a thing and we'll talk about the thing. But don't sass me anymore, Jackie. Let's be friends. We don't. I don't need your back talk. All right. You have a good rest of your day, Jackie. I will talk to you again. Call the next time I'm on, and we'll explore. We'll pick one finite thing, and we'll talk about that and explore it. All right. Have a good rest of your day, Jackie.
Okay. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I thought I was going to have to mute that guy.
Yeah. I think we all became friends in the end.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Jackie and I are going to be besties. We'll talk again.
Yeah.
All right. We'll take one more call and then we'll read super chats. You can send super chats of $5 or more and they will be read on the air. Look at me making another announcement like the champion that I am. All right. Let's talk to Avila.
Hello.
Hi, Avila. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Yeah, I can. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. It's Avila?
No, that's how you pronounce it. Good. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. What would you like to talk about?
Okay. So I don't know if you read my call screen, but I have I guess I don't know if I would consider myself a practicing theist, like a Christian, I guess, but I still hold a lot of, I guess, religious beliefs or ideals subconsciously, I guess. So I'm not sure what I would consider myself, but I guess I'll find out today. But I've talked and have talked to a lot of people who tell me about testimonies and near-death experiences and why they believe that Christianity in particular is true. And it's to some degree I find it compelling because it's I kind of want to believe that this is a thing, but at the same time, I'm if this God did exist, would that even be a good thing? So I don't even know where to start because I have seen even just scrolling through the internet, whatever, I've come across so many channels that are just dedicated to platforming people who talk about their near-death experiences or saying, oh, I died and went to hell and oh, Muslims were there or Jesus saved me and now I'm new. And it's you can't really confirm or deny these people's experiences, right? So it's I don't know how this is proving that God exists because I can't sit here and be oh, that didn't happen to you because I don't know that, right? But it's how does that again prove the existence of God, or do you even need to prove that God exists to be religious? I don't know. I just have so many questions, and that's why I'm not even sure what I would even consider myself at this point. So that's kind of the first point, but I don't know.
Okay.
What you
awesome. I'll
that?
let Trevor go first because I tend to be a steamroller, and it's probably best for him to start.
Well, Yeah, well, with the near-death experiences stuff, I'm sure Shannon knows way more about this than I do, but I've looked into it a bit, and it is a lot. There's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on in the brain when you're dying, as you're losing oxygen and all that stuff. And there's some really cool science that's behind it. I know there was one guy who was getting a scan and then died unexpectedly in the scan, so they were able to like see his brain activity as he was dying, and it was a total fluke thing. So there's a lot going on in your brain when you die. There's also a lot of stories out there that aren't accurate, and people tell their stories. Our memories are a funny thing. Like we remember things differently as we retell something. We remember stuff differently. So you're right. You can't really say, "Oh, your experience is wrong," but there is good reason to doubt that there's a narrative there. Like doubt their narrative as far as this means something supernatural. Because like there's that famous study where they put numbers and symbols up high in a hospital room, and nobody claimed they saw it, even though that was a classic claim before of like, oh, I saw the doctors from above kind of thing, where there's actually not really science that backs that up. There's a lot going on there. But and the other thought I had is just to ask you, like, what is it about the religion that you want to hold on to? Like, is there something there that you really like about being religious or being in that religion? Is there something that's really holding you there? Yeah, I guess that's the question I have for you.
I think because I just grew up religious, that is just kind of something that's innate to me. I don't know a life not revolved around like God or some type of belief. So I guess I've just, every aspect of my life, I try to rationalize like the existence of God, or, you know, Christian God can't be this bad. And it's like, I've always tried to look at, I guess, the more progressive side of things.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just because being religious is just so like innate to me, just because of the environment I grew up in, that I don't see like another world where this is not something part of my identity 24/7. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I was there.
So I don't know. It's not even like.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna ask if I could tell you some cool things about what happens in the brain during near-death experiences. So when you're going through a near, okay, if you must, when you're going through a near-death experience, or you're experiencing not brain death, because once you experience brain death, you're done. Like once sodium potassium ions stop transmitting over your cellular membrane and the neuron, you're done. That's it. It's game over. There's no coming back from that. No one ever has. No one ever will, I don't think. Yeah. But what flatlining is different. Your heart stopping is different. And that's when most near-death experiences happen. So what happens then is that you stop taking in oxygen. You're no longer respirating, which means that you're not taking oxygen in, which means that your cells aren't getting oxygen. And that means that they're going through something called hypoxia, which is them being completely deprived of oxygen. So your cells don't just die immediately. They try to hang on. Like they've got a built-in failsafe. So they have a receptor that is called sigma 6, I believe, in the neuron channel, that is a receptor to a chemical in the brain that is called DMT. So there's endogenous versions of DMT. There's several versions of DMT. You may have heard of the DMT that like people take to go on like, you know, crazy cool like tie-dye trips or whatever. It's similar to that, but there's endogenous versions that do have a mild hallucinogenic property, but not to the same degree. Now, those sigma 6 receptors are receptive to the endogenous DMT that is being produced by your brain while your brain is being deprived of oxygen. You might have even heard of like kids, when I was a kid, used to do this game where they would like do this to their neck to try to make themselves pass out because they would have like a weird sort of like hallucinatory experience. That's what they were doing to themselves. They were giving themselves like brain cellular hypoxia, which is brain damage. So don't do that. That's brain damage. Anyway, DMT is a mild
God.
hallucinogen. So what happens is that when it's activating those cells, it activates them like crazy. So it makes those cells hyperactive and it floods. So every neuron that like has availability that's going through hypoxia that has an open sigma-6 receptor is going to accept that DMT and it's going to immediately start firing. Now, that's happening to keep you consciousness so that your brain doesn't die just in case. And thank God it does, because not everybody flatlines dies. Like, people come back, they can be resuscitated, but that is what your brain does to just like in the death pangs to try to be like, look, don't die yet. There's still a chance. But it is a hallucinogenic substance. So because you're not actively conscious and your neurons are firing, what happens is that you enter into almost like a half conscious, half dream state. It's not a state that any of us would be familiar with unless we're going through cellular hypoxia. That's what's happening when you're going into a near-death experience. But what does your brain do? Your brain doesn't just invent things whole cloth. So your brain is like probably going to, and you're in an emotional state likely. So your brain is going to engage with nodes that are pertaining to potentially your spirituality or memories. Like, you may see people that you love, that you miss, like that sort of thing. See people that you love that are alive right now, that are going to talk to you. All those sorts of things are going to happen to you, which is why there's a direct correlate. Like, no one who is a Christian has a near-death experience and is like, I saw Vishnu. Right? Like, nobody who's a Buddhist has a near-death experience and is like, Muhammad came to me. It always is a direct correlate with the religion that you have. And one of the reasons I think that is because you've already got those nodes pre-established and there's an emotional and spiritual connection to them. So if you've taught yourself through time that the thing that you're going to draw upon in an emotional experience is something like your religion or is something like a person, then those are the types of things that are going to present yourself mentally if your brain is going through a subconscious emotional state in an emergency situation. So I think that that's why those happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's my answer.
Really interesting. I didn't. Okay, that's actually really interesting. I didn't know all of like the scientific background for that. But another thing I wanted to mention is just, like, you brought up like other religions and the, like, I guess people having near-death experiences, but it's like I only ever see this pertaining to like Christianity, and maybe it's just I'm not looking at other religions, but I always see this like near-death experience and testimony. Yeah, like always, I don't know, pertain to Christianity. And it's like, I've even been told that, like, oh, you don't hear Muslims or Buddhists or Hindus have all these near-death experiences as much as Christians do. And it's like, it has to be true. And it's like, I don't find that convincing. Or maybe I'm just not looking actively seeking like Muslims and that.
Like, I can't say definitively that that's not true, but I think that you'd find that it's a pretty standard distribution of the population that have these types of experiences where they see like lights or a loved one or, you know, or have a religious experience. I think that it would be pretty standard distribution along the population. I think that if somebody says that, I would ask them to prove it, because I don't think they could. I think that's just a thing people say.
Yeah. And like a show like those supernatural shows that are like a Christian show, they're only going to bring people on who have had the Christian experience. They're not going to bring people on that have had that other experience. So, because they only want to show that side.
Yeah. And they're invested in discounting the other sides.
Yeah.
To make it seem like theirs are the special one.
Yeah.
And it is in fact not the case that the other people who have near-death experiences that aren't of our God, those are not only rare, but something else. These ones are the real ones. They're the real ones.
Yeah. It seems very biased, I guess, in trying to basically prove the point. But then there's another thing I've heard a lot, and it's basically people tell me that, well, Christianity, there's no other like religious doctrine that's as like detailed or has all of these, like you have Jesus Christ who was resurrected and all this, and like if you go to like Islam or all these other religions, like they don't have like your Jesus Christ or have all these detailed experiences, and I'm just like, I don't know, like maybe, like I'm just always just like I don't
Mormonism
know
is
how
pretty
to.
detailed. So
Yeah.
is Scientology. Scientology is detailed as fuck. So, like,
And
Really?
I Uber everywhere. I live in the city. I don't drive, so I Uber a lot. And when people ask me what I do for a living, I tell them about my channel and what I talk about. So a lot of times they'll start telling me about the religion. And I've had so many different people in different religions tell me that exact same thing. That like their religion is different and unique because this detail, this detail, this detail. It's the only religion that does this scientific fact. Like I've heard them all, and I just nod along and that's interesting. That's interesting. But it's all of them. They all say that.
everyone's a special
That's
snowflake.
interesting.
Yeah.
And then thing was basically like, if this God were to exist, like I don't know how we would prove it, but let's say like they were to exist, like would this God even be like one worth worshipping? Like especially when it comes to like LGBT things, because basically all I hear, like I'm bisexual, whatever the case may be, but all I ever hear,
Amen!
especially like in my personal, yeah, especially
Go
in my
team.
personal life, it's just like in my personal life, it's always like, oh, the Bible, homosexuality, and it's like I do think that there is some like maybe historical context behind like what the Bible talks about regarding homosexuality, but I just never like I don't think it even is about like being gay, if that makes sense. And it's like even if it was, and God was going to send all queer people to hell, like is that God that I really want to worship? And it's like
No.
I don't understand how people
No.
voluntarily like would want to worship that God.
Dissonance. Complete,
Yeah.
total
Yeah,
dissonance.
like is this? So
I
sorry,
think-
sorry. Go on.
No, I think you and I have a lot of similarities in our experiences and stuff. I was there too, like where I was LGBTQIA affirming very much and a Christian near the end. And I remember I had a conversation with a family member, and I was telling them this, and I had it mapped out why the Bible wasn't against homosexuality. And the response I got was, hey, if you're going to throw out part of the Bible, you might as well throw out the whole thing. And at first it was like, oh, maybe that should challenge me to like, hate gay people or whatever, but not really. But like that, I think that was the message. But I realized that, you know what? Yeah, I can go through and I can make justifications for all the awful things that the Bible says. I can say that slavery in the Bible wasn't really slavery, and I can find fixes, which the slavery in the Bible was slavery. But all those other awful things like, God killing 42 kids with bears. I can find little justifications in my head, map it out like a conspiracy theorist with a string. I can keep doing that all I want to make God the God I want him to be, or I can accept that the God of the Bible isn't a good being to follow and has taught a lot of people to be awful people. So I realized that, no, I am going to throw out the whole Bible because it is portraying an awful, awful God.
Cheers.
That's just where
Yeah,
I'm from.
and that's the problem. Is that makes sense because I just don't understand how you have like progressive Christians who are very affirming.
Mhm.
Like to me, it just doesn't make sense. Like how you could just like overlook all of the like fucked up things in the Bible and be like, oh, well, God is all love. And it's just like I hear the complete opposite from Christians who like the different parts of the spectrum. And it's like you're going to hell, or I hate like the fucking like passive aggressive, like, oh, you'll face it on judgment day, or you'll know, or I'm just trying to save your soul from eternal damnation. It's like it just bothers my soul because I don't understand like, why you would want to believe in a God who does this to people in general. Like it doesn't. I don't. That's why I'm so.
Most of them don't even read the Bible.
I feel like yeah, probably. And it's like the belief in God for me, I just feel like was a comfort thing. Like I found it very comforting that like, oh, when the whole world was against me, quote unquote, that like, oh, I could just like talk to God at the end of the day, or just like have this person that I didn't hear from directly. But it's like, is that even worth all of this?
No,
Like,
I was
so
the same Yeah. Because I went to Bible college after. Yeah, sorry.
No, go on.
No, yeah, I went to Bible college after high school. I was a youth pastor. I put my identity in this belief. So it was so hard for me to leave. It was so hard for me to question things, like even to admit that I had questions. And there was those little justifications, like I like praying or I like spending time with God. But you can go for a nice walk without believing in a in a higher power. Like you can have those reflective moments. Yeah, you can meditate, you can think about things, you can have a conversation with a friend who is real, you know?
Exactly.
No, that's true. It's like I still am like fairly young. Like I'm 16 now, right? And it's like I, for some reason, like the beginning of when I came out, which is like my whole life has been dedicated to trying to dismantle the Bible, prove to people that being queer is in a sin, and trying to like understand like what do I like. I don't know. It's just like I feel my life is dedicated around this now, and I haven't even lived on this earth that long. So it's so just confusing, and especially when I see things. Thank you, but especially when I see and hear things that like
I was in my late 20s, early 30s before I even came to the point that I was contemplating deconversion, and I was accidentally forced into it. If something awful hadn't happened to me, I may still be a Christian now.
Yeah.
So
really
good for you. Yeah, for real. Like if something awful hadn't happened to me and I hadn't been like, I really need to turn to the book because that's what you're supposed to do when awful things happen. I need to throw myself into my faith. Otherwise, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. That's what you're supposed to do. This will give me strength. This will fortify me. I will be fortified in the blood of Christ. That will get me through this. And I'm going to read my Bible end to end. And the more in Jesus and the more in God I am, the better I will be. And this is something that is probably happening to me to make me stronger. So I am going to do what God would intend for me. And I am going to refortify my faith. And that is what I've tried to do. And here I am on an Atheist Collins show, because that's where that road leads. Like, if you're really being intellectually honest with yourself, I think that's where that road leads. And you're coming to this now on your own just by exposing yourself to different people's ideas.
Yeah.
So I think you're killing it, Avila. But we do need to let you go because we have to read a bunch of super chats and the show is almost over. But please do call again to talk to any one of us if you need to think any of these things through. We appreciate your perspective and we welcome you during your journey and sharing it with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation that we had. But
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Go Team Canada forever.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, Avila. Bye. Big Team Canada Day today.
Yeah. And Teenager Day.
I know. Oh, bless Jasper's heart. Oh, gracious. Goodness, Jasper. I hope he does call back.
Yeah.
How do you feel, Trevor? You did it. You hosted your first show on the line.
Yeah, I didn't cry. That was good. I was worried I was going to cry. But yeah, it went well. I thought.
Awesome. I think it went well too. I am stoked that you were here. And now you get to read super chats. Any super chats $5 or more, I'm mandated to read, so I'm going to read them. All right, so $5, and I appreciate them. God, that made me sound like an asshole. What is wrong with me? Why am I who I am as a person? Is a question I ask myself all the time. Every time I open my mouth, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? $5 from William Mattis. I prayed to Roland in chat last night for a pizza. I offered a pizza sub. Today I got pizza by buying it. Clearly, Roland bless me. Praise Roland.
Amen.
Yeah, that's the way that works.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You got it. That's how prayer works. You pray for it, then you do it yourself, and then the prayer was answered. $10 from He Was Fuzzy Wuzzy. Oh, wow. Believe it or not. Woo! I was hoping you would be on the line one day. Today is that day. Love your channel, dude. Welcome to the line. Well, we're happy to have him here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to be on.
All right. $9.99 from Schmidt Cat. So awesome to see you here, Trevor. But big Trevor fans in the chat. I'm loving it. believe it or not, was one of the first channels I found when starting my deconstruction. Oh, that's
Amazing.
huge. That
Yeah.
is huge. That's awesome.
That's-
Good channel to find too.
It's always insane to me when I read stuff like that. Like the fact that like it's almost gone full circle, you know, like me thinking of who I found when I was questioning things and who was available at the time, and then just to think that you're involved in somebody else's life who you've never met. It's always humbling.
I totally agree with that. I got into YouTube. I'll read the super chat in a second, but completely by accident, like close to 7 years ago, because I was watching channels like Genetically Modified Skeptic and Paulogia and watching the Bible Reloaded. And now I'm in this world where I've been doing this with them as like my contemporaries, and I know them, and it's the strangest thing like in the world. And so when people say to me like, oh my gosh, it really helped me, I'm like, no, you don't know. I'm like you, and I just do stuff. So I totally get that feeling.
Yeah.
You're wrong. It's everybody else. It's not me. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Here's a riddle. What has 4 legs but no knees, a top but no bottom, is covered in stuff, and has no place in my home? That's no place in my home. If Shannon Q doesn't know, ask Paul. I know. Trevor, do you think you know the answer to this riddle? You may not be in on the. You don't know the inside joke. The answer is a coffee table. It's a coffee table. There's a running joke on this channel because my partner is some sort of sociopath that hates coffee tables. So we don't have a coffee table in my house. Yeah, it's okay. And we've had a series of compromise, which involved me buying every other piece of furniture I've ever wanted in my life and every other piece of art I've ever wanted. Anything but a coffee table. So I'm just filling the rest of the house with anything but coffee table. But there's still no coffee table.
I've never owned a dining table, and I don't ever plan on it. So that's my coffee table, I guess.
Okay, so you have the same sort of wild idiosyncrasy that Paul has. Okay, fair enough.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
The answer is coffee table. $10 from Profex34. Big fan of yours, Trevor. It's so good to see you on this platform. I can't listen to this live stream right now, but I'll listen in later. I'd say you're doing God's work, but we all know he doesn't work. Oh, that's sweet. And funny. I'm funny.
Yeah.
$5 from Jonathan. Hey, Jackie, if you are still here as a former Peterson boy, get out, please, please, please. He will make you hate the left for pure lies and fear. Yeah, welcome to the other side of that, Jonathan. I'm so sorry that you were Peterson pilled, and I'm so glad that you found the antidote. Hopefully Jackie does. Hopefully Jackie calls back and we can keep talking, because it takes more than one conversation to undo that type of like deep. Yeah, especially when he uses that ambiguous language. The ambiguous language, like it's not even just ambiguous, it's innocuous. Like it covers so many things because it's mostly metaphorical that you can kind of make it into like whatever feels good to you, and then feel as though you're justified because it sounds smart and he's a doctor and he's talking about God. So like it's that trifecta. It's like sound smart, doctor, God must be the right way to go.
Yeah.
And so you're less likely to scrutinize it in the same way that you would other things, and more likely to kind of assimilate it. And
and it always scares me though, like when I say, because I used to have this mindset that if somebody were to say something like this to me and like, oh, you'll make it out, then it would like set something in my mind like, no, I won't, I'm in for life, and like I would become more stubborn. So I always I'm like, I hope you see the light, buddy, but I don't know how to tell you that because I don't want to reinforce the darkness.
Right. $10. Jamie M. Shannon Q. That's me. I just watched your debate with Darth Duncan Dawkins. I can't express in words how amazing you were. He's a piece of work. You got him flustered like I've not seen him flustered before. Yeah, I hear that a lot. I've never really watched another one of his debates. I watched him talk to Eric on Talk Heathen. And I think I saw him interact with one of maybe it was Dr. Josh. That might have been after. And I think that's about it. So I didn't know the depths of what he was like. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'm sorry or happy that you had to watch that. I'm sorry I had to do it. So, but yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. At least I'm glad you enjoyed it. That was something. It sure was something. $10 from Von Rack. Shannon Q. Love your rationalism and fury. Oh, well, thank you. Tell Paulo Koga or whatever his name is, that Owen Morgan wants to talk with somebody about Mennonite religion. Oh, well, we know Telltale. Owen could literally just send either one of us a text message. He has our phone numbers. Trevor, I like the way you make your points. I like Trevor's points too.
Thank you. I went to a Mennonite church for a while. True
Oh,
story.
did you?
Yeah. Just for like a
That's
year.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul was born into it.
Oh, okay.
When he's like genetically Mennonite.
Right. Oh, that we have that Calgary connection too, so that makes sense.
Yeah, he grew up in Saskatoon. $10 from Watcher 235711. Believers, this is your sign. Learn some biblical Hebrew or Greek. It will expand your mind. I mean, yeah. You're going to believe in the Bible, learning the language it was originally written in.
Or
Probably a good idea.
Most of them won't even read the book in the language they speak.
Valid.
Yeah.
Valid. $5 from Jeff Cochran. Read any good books this year. Hook us up with some racks. Oh, okay. I have a couple. Trevor, have you read any good books? I've got to look mine up.
No. This has not been a reading year for me. I read a novel when I was on vacation. That's pretty much all I've read this year.
I am currently reading 3 books simultaneously that are decent. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, I'm reading. 1,000 Brains by Jeff Hawkins. And I'm about to start Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky because I figured it's about time I read it because all these friggin' Peterson people keep talking. I've actually got it in my queue. Like, no joke. You can see it in my queue. Crime and and Dopamine Nation.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're fine.
I realize I said I haven't read, and then I'm like, I kind of have.
I count my Audible books as reading. I'm dyslexic,
Yeah.
So
Same.
I don't care. I know the connotation of read is that you like use your eyes to take in that information and assimilate it mentally. But the words and information are the same if you're receiving them in an auditory form. And I have no intention of ever discriminating because how you receive that information isn't as important as actually receiving that information. And anybody who's some sort of weird elitist about it can kiss my whole ass.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has the same sort of abilities to assimilate things from a neurological perspective, and shaming them into thinking that that's the only way to do it is just going to discourage them from accessing those mediums. So if you have a problem with it, you can come for me directly and then you can suck it. I don't care. $4.99 from Ben 9 Lives. My son used to watch a show called Ben 10 all the time. I wonder if that's really Ben 9 or Ben 9 Lives. Maybe it's Ben 9 Lives. I'm sorry if I was wrong the first time. Jackie sounds he's influenced by the obnoxious Darth Dawkins. No, he's Peterson. He wasn't Precept. Darth Dawkins, for your information, Trevor, if you've never been exposed to him, is a presuppositional apologist. Okay. $5 from Elite Trainer Kenway. Work, 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 Sky Moon.
Work, 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 Sky Moon. It's my tagline.
Oh, okay.
At the end of my videos. I don't know if you can see it there. You can't. It's too small. But it's my tagline.
I should have known that. I've watched most of your videos. I'm a bad fan. Should be ashamed of me. $10 from S. Jacob Powell. Wow, just got home and saw Believe It or Not. I absolutely love your videos. Love the line and all the hosts. Keep it up. Woo! Big love for you in the chat. Awesome. I knew everybody would be familiar with you. It would be crazy for them not to be. $9.99 from Jason. Oh, that's a fun name. A little more insanity for you, Trevor, as your channel and content are very appreciated and useful. Thank you. And Shannon, #Team Coffee Table.
Nice.
It's on both of our teams. Love to see it. Love to see it. Thank you, Jason. $25. Wow, thank you. From Godfrey and Good. Godfrey and Good. I love these names. Godfrey and Good. Godfrey and Good. Aloha. I was told that the 10% of the brain concept was in reference to intellectual capacity, not usage of parts. What are your thoughts? Mahalo. I think that that's a strange myth.
Yeah.
Like, because 10% of intellectual capacity, because we're always, whatever intellectual capacity is available to us is always in use. Right. So it's weird to say that there's intellectual capacity available to us that we're just not accessing. Like, that would be strange. And the only other thing to say is that only 10% of the brain is active, and that's just not true. I just think it's a weird myth. I don't think that it's actually true, like in any substantive way at all.
I think it's one of those myths, I think, that goes strong because it makes for interesting movie plots or whatever, or things to say in movies. so people just accept
Scarlett Johansson God.
Yeah. And that turns into a USB drive at the end.
Right. Just transmits her. So yeah, that was a weird movie. It was wild.
Yeah.
$10 from President Starscream. I have a fellow atheist friend who was never really religious, who had a near-death experience in which they experienced nothingness. So yeah, what Shannon was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could make total sense, that you would just, have a semi-conscious experience where just basically nothing is happening. Yep. Trevor,
I do
thanks.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, no. Just with near-death experiences, I like the idea that my dad, when he died, might have had that moment where he thought, oh, I was right, with the oh, I'm at the pearly gates. This is true. I didn't waste this part of my life. I like that idea that he was like, oh, good. Confirmed, even just for a moment.
Phew.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it might have been a relief at the end for even, yeah. Yeah, I get that for sure. As somebody whose dad's also passed away relatively recently, I get that. $10 from Eric Mishma. Trevor, thanks for your sometimes very emotional videos. Many of them have been therapeutic. Shannon, you have taught me a lot. # no coffee tables. You started strong. You started so strong. Thank you. That's very kind. And I agree. Everybody who hasn't should go see Trevor's videos. You can watch mine too if you want to, but I don't know. His are better. $5 from Monkey at a Typewriter. I will never understand the believers who haven't read the book. You think God wrote you an instruction book and you're okay with the Cliff Notes. I was totally that kind of Christian. I was I was a pulpit preached Christian. I had a curated version of Christianity. When I did go to the Bible, it was suggested passages. And if I was reading it myself, I was rereading passages that I found, solace in or enjoyed.
Yeah.
And maybe reading a bit before, a bit after them. I certainly wasn't reading straight through. It was never in the cards for me until I hit a wall. Yeah. So I think that really staunch evangelicals don't really get that, because they are, they're trained in the Bible, it's drilled into them, from go. But for most of us, that just wasn't the case, I don't think.
No.
$4.99 from Jamnik06. Great show. # team coffee table. # team audiobooks count as reading. Yes, they do.
Oh, yeah.
We'll fight anybody to the death. For real, we're incorporating the same information. If you're some sort of weird elitist, it's you're not actually reading. Good, fine, go away. Stop talking to me. The $13.99 from Tim Urufsky. Thanks for your great work, Trevor. The semen the semen R clips you find are always leave my jaw on the floor. Keep up the great work.
And my dyslexic butt, can I swear? Yeah.
Yeah.
My dyslexic ass read that as sermon.
No.
I didn't even. Yeah. The clips I find can be. People ask me how I find such awful clips of pastors, and I'll tell you, it is not hard. It is not hard to find a clip
Google
of a pastor saying, yeah, exactly.
Google sermon.
Yeah.
The end. Have the patience to listen to one all the way through. $4.99 from Poor Claire. You still have no coffee table? I will never have a coffee table, Claire. It's not in the cards for me. Like sometimes you get to the point where you're like, I can't pick this fight anymore. This is just gonna have to be my life. I'm starting to think you don't actually want one, or you have one and are pretending not to. I do not have one, and I would be happy to have one. Okay, let me tell you a story. Pause the stream. We just got back from Newfoundland. We went to Newfoundland and I rented an Airbnb in a place called Conception Bay, which is beautiful. We were actually in a place called the Gullies, and I rented a beautiful Airbnb there with a hot tub, and we stayed there, and it had a coffee table, and I took notes all the time. I was like, look, there's barely anything on the coffee table. Periodically, I'd be like, there's only remote controls and like a coaster on the coffee table. And I would say that to Paul, and he'd be like, yeah, now, but before there was. So we were fighting about the coffee table. And while I was sitting down, I was like, see, my son can put his drink on the coffee table. Look, we have a place to put our stuff on the coffee table. So I am respecting his ardent desire. I need to actually convince him. If I bring one in, it's going to be a fight, and then I'm not even going to get to enjoy the coffee table. So I have to actually convince him that we need a coffee table. It's not that I don't want one. It's that I'm not willing to spend my entire life standing on either side of one, fighting about its existence. I have to convince him that it's something we need. $5 from William Mattes. What is the truest Canadian stereotype? Oh, we're both from very different parts of Canada.
Yeah. We like maple syrup.
We do.
For me.
Poutine.
Poutine, yeah. We love poutine.
I don't think I've met a Canadian that doesn't like poutine.
Yeah.
I don't like beer.
I love beer,
Hockey?
but I loved it too much, so I don't drink it anymore. I don't know. I don't like hockey.
I do like
but
hockey.
A lot of people love hockey. I don't know about the polite one. Everybody says Canadians are polite, but I think it's just that we say sorry a lot. I don't think that's the same as being polite, but
I think that maybe we're faster to recognize and like admit when we were wrong, maybe, and maybe that's
yeah.
Like more open-mindedness. Although I've met some really goddamn close-minded Canadians, especially lately. Our climate is shifting here culturally, vastly. Much. Like it's like whatever happened down south is slowly starting to permeate into us up here, and I am not about it. I don't like it.
No,
I think all of us like poutine. I think that's the truest stereotype. I think you'd be hard fought to find somebody who doesn't like poutine.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada. Maybe that's the one. I don't know. I don't know. That's probably it. $5 from Moonstar. Happy Pride. I'm so glad to see Trevor from Believe It or Not on the line. Question for both. Who played the biggest part in your deconstruction? This is going to sound like a weird answer, but me. I played the biggest part in my deconstruction. Trevor, what's yours?
Me, definitely. Some James Randi in there. My religious family members helped, not in the way they meant to.
Why don't you look this up? Fine, I will. Oh, didn't help your case.
Seth Andrews' voice still reminds me of the early days, so I guess.
Have you ever met Seth? He's about the nicest person. He's the nicest person in the world. But also the smartest of asses. That man drives me crazy on Twitter as a sport. $4.99 from Ben 9 Lives. Coffee tables bite shin bones repeatedly. I don't know why you hate me, but no, they don't. Stop it. They're great.
What's your ottoman situation?
Do you have ottomans? We have an L-shaped couch, and I have one of those breakfast tray tables, and that sits next to me I sit in the corner specifically so that I can have it next to me with my legs up and put my drink on it and the remotes. So God help me if I move too much, because then it shifts and then my drink spills. Paul just puts his on the floor, and then I kick them, and then he's like, "Hey!" And I'm like, "What the fucking stop putting your drinks on the floor?" That's where I'm
Only
walking.
there was a table. Yeah.
$5 from. So you see why this is a meme? Because I get and we never host together anymore. So like he's probably like actively like undermining me when he hosts shows. Freaking Paulogia, that guy. Cameron's right about you, by the way. That's gonna burn him bad. Sorry, I'm just kidding. I didn't mean that. I love you. $5 from William Mattes. How did the South not get poutine? I don't know, because it's like they don't have the right squeakers. I think.
Yeah, it's
you
the
need
squeaker.
the right squeakers.
Yeah,
and
I think that's exactly
Americans are like, what are squeakers? But you need the right squeakers. You need the exact right squeakers. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Like you can't shred cheese and make a poutine. You need the proper squeakers and the right consistency of gravy. French fries, I'd argue, are important too, but everybody's different about it. But I love poutine. They have go.
Oh, me and my siblings are doing a poutine fest for Canada Day. So we invited all our cousins over, and we're going to make a bunch of poutine. And there have been discussion, like people in the chat, like, are we using cheese curd? It's like, yeah, it's poutine. It's not disco fries.
That's the only option. Like you can put on other things. Like when I was just in Newfoundland, they had a kind of poutine, which was like, it was cheese curd. So like it was the squeakers and gravy and French fries. Really good. Like I like the home cut French fries, like deep fried home cut French fries. Yeah. But they had like stuffing that you would put in a turkey on top of it. That was pretty good. But my all-time favorite, if you're going to add something, is pulled pork. Pulled pork poutine is
that's
like
what we're doing. Yeah.
Oh, it's one of the best things you'll ever eat in your whole entire life. Is a pulled pork poutine. There is no beating it. Hands down. The end. Full stop. All right. Well, we did it. We've got to the end of the super chats. Thank you everybody for sending them. I appreciate you very much. And we've gotten to the end of the show. Trevor, just in case anybody doesn't know where to find you, please tell them, in case they've tuned in late, who you are and where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm Trevor from Believe It or Not. So go to Believe It or Not on YouTube. Just belief, not believe. And then you'll see a little devil. And then that's me, the devil icon. And then you click on that, subscribe there, or you can find me on all the other socials. Something about Believe It or Not will be my name.
Awesome. And I'm Shannon Q, and you can find me mostly on this channel and on a channel called Shannon Q. And if you're brave, on Twitter, but I wouldn't recommend it. Or X or whatever it's called now. I still call it Twitter. I'm conservative.
Well, as long as Elon is dead naming his daughter, we can dead name.
There Twitter. We go. Then we can call it Twitter. $4.99 from Homespun Covers. If God can do anything, he can make a coffee table with a top but no bottom. Paul would actually probably be into that. Actually, if it actually hovered over the ground, he would be all about it.
Yeah,
that I might be able to smuggle into the house. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. The show is over. And this is my favorite part of the show, where I awkwardly don't know how to finish. And they put the patrons on the screen, and I just keep talking because I have no idea when the end is actually going to be. And the running joke is, what am I actually going to be saying at the point that the show is finally cutting me off and it's over? Maybe it's something like Team Coffee Table. Maybe it's something like pulled pork poutine is the best poutine. Maybe it's something like go subscribe to Believe